All right, Chad, I want to show you something to be positive about. Candidate, Democratic primary voters are more likely to vote for in the primary election someone who proposes larger scale policies that cost more and might be harder to pass into law, but could bring major change on these issues. 63% of Democratic primary voters. Someone who proposes smaller scale policies that cost less and might be easier to pass into law, but will bring less change on these issues. 33%. There you have it, chat. 2/3 of the Democrats, from Biden Democrats to Sanders Warren Democrats, from white people to people of color, from young people to old, to women and men, they want big change now. This is incontrovertible. This is irrefutable. There's nothing you can say. People hate the status quo. Even Democratic primary voters, the most engaged voters in the fucking process, a primary voter, a political freak, even they want more change.
Calling from a 610 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Mike from PA. How are you doing?
Mike from PA. Look who's decided to call in after all this time. Too busy with his own show to call in.
well, you know, I figured I'd give you guys a call on my special night.
Well, this is exciting. Mike from PA, of course, has his own show, his own Twitch show, and doesn't have the time to call in anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately. But hey, you know what? We should hook up sometime. Honestly.
All right,
I'll make some time.
I mean, let's do that.
Yeah, but I am getting more and more hyped out of my mind. Normally, I'm pretty calm on election night, but I think Summer Lee might be on the side path.
Don't say the word that starts with a W. I was telling Sam.
I didn't say that.
I was telling Sam about this.
You should be paying more attention. It's going to be tight. I think
Mike,
she might be on it.
Mike,
but
you know how I got
Mike,
you know how I got the Giants to win the Super Bowl in the 2011-2012 season?
Oh, God.
I didn't say the W word on game day ever.
You already wished a concussion on Crosby. I'm already frustrated with you. So don't
I would never wish a concussion on anybody. But you know, like, look, I'm just happy with how that series played out, and then I hope Crosby enjoys golf.
Oh boy, okay. Well,
dude, you guys have won like 3 Stanley Cups in 15 years. Just let us have this, please, Jesus.
No idea what anybody's talking about right now. What else?
So I don't know if you remember this, Sam, but I helped run a race in 2018 for a progressive candidate.
Of course, I remember that.
And so he's running again for the same seat that Hillary won. And we famously, the reason why I'm such a big John Fetterman supporter is he was fighting against the Democratic Party to help us, including personally pulling out his checkbook, writing a $2,000 check because we were a Medicare for All candidate while he was running for lieutenant governor. And he really earned my loyalty that, race because of how hard he fought for us. We ended up losing by like 1%. Now, the Republicans spent $2 million against us in a state Senate race.
That's nuts.
It's probably the most that's been spent in the PA state Senate race in a while. But it looks like the Republican incumbent, the guy I helped, is running again. He just won the nomination again tonight. Looks like the Republican, who is very powerful, may be defeated by a far-right candidate in that seat, which voted for Hillary, Obama, and Biden. So that state Senate candidate I helped might actually end up winning his election because, they're going to throw that one to the wolves.
It's sad in some respects, and on some level, this is like the Democratic strategy, but it literally has been, it feels like over the past 20 plus years, Democrats just wait for the Republicans to get progressively more insane. And it's almost like every other election, their insanity becomes so intense that they overreach and a Democrat gets in, and then there's a correction, and then it happens again.
In Pennsylvania, our politics is so diverse, and we have, with John winning, and, this is like a pivot point because he's really disproving the like DNC corporate, like, oh, we need to have a son of a PNC lobbyist who accepts big corporate money, who's a Marine, former prosecutor. That's who we're going to pick. Got absolutely annihilated by John, who is a populist. Like, he just is a populist. He supports the positions. He thinks the majority of Pennsylvania support, and he's overwhelmingly like left-leaning. And he's not afraid to go in and take positions, like he wants to legalize magic mushroom and stuff that is like not even being talked about by like normal politicians. But he did a 67 county tour, which is every county in Pennsylvania, to legalize marijuana. And he's winning in these rural counties by 50, 60 points. Like, that's why
he's pro-union in a way that I feel like hasn't been mainstreamed by a ton of Democratic candidates in a long time, too.
Yeah, and he talks about, like, structural policy that would help the left. So, like, campaign finance reform, voting reform, the PRO Act, the For the People Act, gerrymandering, expand, all this kind of stuff, getting rid of the filibuster. Like, he's going to be a very strong voice in the caucus should he prevail. And, if Summer pulls it out, if Summer Lee pulls it out, like, that is Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And that is a totally different direction for that kind, the quintessential Obama-Trump region is going to be represented by John Fetterman and Summer Lee, as opposed to
we hope Summer Lee.
You're really counting your chickens
like
here.
out in front of your skis, bud.
Dave.
I'm not trying to count him.
Not Dave. Sorry, Mike. Dave Wasserman is saying that McCormick and Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, could end up in recount territory because it's getting so close between the two of them. Dave Wasserman seems to think that that's going to be good for Fetterman. What's your take on that?
I mean, I think Oz is just the worst candidate for the Republicans, personally, because he doesn't have, like, that natural psycho base support, and I don't think he's well-loved by, corporate Republicans. Just all in all, a pretty piss-poor candidate. McCormick just has so much money, and he could run a Youngkin-style campaign, which I would be not as excited. I think that would be not as good for John as a Dr. Oz kind of a joke candidate. It really comes down to how well John Fetterman performs out west, and, if he can keep it closer in the rural areas, and also, the collar counties and the Lehigh Valley are really important. And so, I think Mehmet Oz does pretty poor in the collar counties, the Lehigh Valley out west. I see him as a weak candidate.
I think Oz is weaker than McCormick, but I think they both have. I think that Fetterman matches up well with both of them, more or less for the same reason.
What's your? Oh, sorry. Go on that.
Go ahead.
Sam. What is your take on the Lehigh Valleys? I asked this because I went to college in the Lehigh Valley, and I'm like, I wish I was more active in like understanding the politics in that area. But why do you think, in particular, the Lehigh Valley would not be interested in someone like Dr. Oz?
It's almost like the collar counties plus, and then you have this. You have Allentown, which has grown really large. Grown with Latino immigration. You have becoming more of a bedroom community for Philadelphia and New York.
Easton.
And so it has
where I went to school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it has like a combination of like, recent immigrants and young, it's younger than much of Pennsylvania. It's the only region in the state that's growing robustly in population. So it's much closer to a more, the type of areas that are trending more Democratic over time. And it's, it's not like an ancestral Democratic, although it was in the past because of Bethlehem Steel. It's now like had a new wave of growth that is like makes it more similar to, the counties surrounding like Georgia, Atlanta and Georgia. So I just think that, Oz is kind of doesn't play as well with those kind of voters. And that's kind of my own personal judgment talking to people. And I think John Fetterman is just like a very strong candidate. Like he's got the vibe. He has the intangibles, which is, you just can't make it happen. You either have or you don't. And I think he really does.
All right. Well, good to know. Mike, thank you for the insight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, and hope to be on soon.
All right. Talk soon.
Yeah. Well, you got to call in.
Will do, Sam.
All right.
Bye.
That's Mike.
See you, bud.
It's been. I feel like it's been like a year. Thanks for calling, Mike. It's been a long time since we heard from Mike from PA. Was that the first time you've ever even heard from him?
I know him from like Twitter and stuff. I can't remember if we've
call
spoken
into the
on
show.
the phone.
No, he was a regular caller, and then he went off and found fame himself, and left us in the dust. That's what happens.
It's like what happened in the Kanye documentary.
I mean, almost identical. I'm not familiar with that documentary, but it sounds very much like the way that Mike from PA operates, just like Kanye.
They're identical, honestly, the two of them.
Have you ever seen Mike from PA's sneakers?
No.
No, he's got his own brand of sneakers.
Bernard Sanders, chat. Bernard Sanders. Use his full name. Show respect.
Joining me now is the progressive independent senator from Vermont who caucuses with the Democrats, Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, it's good to see you, sir.
Good to be with you.
Let me start with what you know probably instinctively these days, but our polling has found 75% of the country thinks we're headed in the wrong direction. In fact, just 28% of Democrats right now think the country is headed in the right direction.
All right, so Dasha.
Where do you stand? Do you think we're headed in the wrong direction?
I sure do. Look, what we're looking at is a nation today where the billionaire class, the people on top, are doing phenomenally well, Chuck. The middle class continues to decline. We're seeing increased concentration of ownership in America, which has huge impacts for ordinary people. You got three Wall Street firms, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, that have assets of over $20 trillion, controlling hundreds of corporations. You're seeing millions of people unable to afford the cost of prescription drugs, unable to afford health care, unable to put gas in the tank. So how can anyone think that what's going on right now is good? And obviously, what I and other progressives are trying to do is put together a movement which tells the billionaire class in this country, whose profits are soaring, who are getting richer and richer, you know what? You can't have it all. We need an economy that works for the middle class, the working class, the elderly, the children, not just the few on top.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about the movement, because there's definitely, we see it in our own polling, there are more people that agree with sort of your mindset, that you're framing. We need big structural change. But what do we do now before the elections? What, at the end of the day, you have the Senate that you have, not the one that you want. What can get done now that could actually mitigate what looks like it's going to be a tough year for Democrats?
Look, we could
get everything we want if simply Democrats who were elected as Democrats voted for the Democratic platform. I don't understand the logic of these people. Did they say, I'm not going to do the Democratic platform, vote for me, I'm a Democrat? Like, what's the logic here? If the Democratic platform was so toxic, then how did they get elected in the first place? Is the inflation from quantitative easing, from the supply chain shit, or both? It's all of the above. When we gave pandemic relief, we also shut down the economy, and a lot of people saved. They saved money. But instead of forecasting that spending would return, so we would need more of a supply, what happened is people shifted their spending away from services because they couldn't use them towards goods. And so there was a lot more of the economy was trying to purchase goods. Then you had all those supply chains shut down. A lot of producers in a panic shut down in the face of the pandemic and have been unable to ramp back up. So it's a combination of all of those things. And of course, quantitative easing, easy money, low interest rates, low supply. And then there's a supply crisis, as I said. And I think this is the dominant issue. It is a supply crisis. It is actually real inflation. Now, you could have all sorts of reasons why that real inflation exists. It's not just corporate greed. There really is a supply constraint. We're not producing enough shit. The economy is too small. Now, is it because everyone is fully employed and we have our economy fully firing on all cylinders? I don't believe so. We're producing less houses per year today than we did in the 60s. You're telling me we can't build more houses? So that is that's why housing prices are going up. Lack of supply. And then, of course, people's personal balance sheets got better because they got savings. They started saving, they weren't consuming as much. And so you had that deferred consumption, and then it became actual consumption all at once. That's why we're seeing what you saw. We're seeing what we see. So how do we get out of it? Well, I mean, obviously raising interest rates is going to tamp down on inflation. We have an asset price bubble that needs to be popped. We need a recession. In my personal opinion, we need a recession. We need to get these we need to blow up the people that housing, all the asset speculators need to lose. I want to make BlackRock go bankrupt because they bought too many houses. Make the line go down. There is a housing crisis in Seattle. I tried buying a house for months and couldn't do it. We were going to have to sell our house and rent a house for a while because I refused to poop on my life savings into the bloated housing market. I mean, I'm not here to give you financial advice, but housing prices are insane.
Early on in the Biden administration, one of the most significant pieces.
By the way, how's
the
the stock market doing today?
That was the American Rescue Plan, which, Chuck, in my view, did a whole lot to help people deal with the economic turmoil that we saw as a result of COVID and massive unemployment. What we have got to do right now, it's not hard. You know what you do? You listen to the American people and not wealthy campaign contributors. What does that mean? It means that right now you lower the outrageous cost of prescription drugs in this country. You have the guts to take on the pharmaceutical industry that right now has 1,500 paid lobbyists in Washington, D.C. You expand Medicare. I happen to believe, as candidates that I support believe, that health care is a human right, not a function of making huge profits for the insurance companies and the people who own them. You got to move toward expanding health care. You got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. You got to create millions of jobs by dealing with the existential threat today of climate. And by the way, you got to do what the American
Bitcoin will stay around
want.
30K. You think 30K is some sort of like significant resistance? So what we would want to, so you're saying there's a lot of resistance at 30K, and you feel like we're going to run up again. I just feel like the economy's running out of steam. You know, when they raise interest rates 75 basis points, that's just going to take a fucking hatchet to the economy.
Want and understand that it is
speculative
women
assets
who have
like
the right
Bitcoin
to
are
control their own bodies, not
That's
the
my
government.
personal belief, but maybe I'm
Okay,
wrong.
everything you said there was being addressed in Build Back Better, okay? It wasn't as big as you wanted it. It was too big for some. But why do we have nothing, right? That is the head scratcher here. Understand you don't have it all. Why is it zero? Why is there nothing?
Because they don't want it.
Well, it should not be a head scratcher. You got two members of the Senate, Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, who have sabotaged what the president has been fighting.
That's a strong word,
sabotage.
By the way, where's Biden? Bernie's right, but Biden is too much of a cuck to say it. Where's Biden? People stab Biden in the back and they pay no price. He's a loser. God, Biden is such a loser, man.
Well, you help me out with a better word here. You got 48 members of the Senate who wanted to go forward with an agenda that helped working families, that was prepared to take on the wealthy and the powerful. You got a president
who
wanted to do that. You
300
had two people who prevented us from doing that. You have a better word than sabotage? That's fine, but I think that is the right word. And I think pressure has got to be put on the part of people in West Virginia, in Arizona, to say, you know what? Why don't you stand up for ordinary Americans, not just your wealthy campaign contributors? Why don't you have the guts to take on the drug companies and the insurance companies and the fossil fuel industry? And I think we have got to go and take that agenda that you indicated. It's what the American people want. Do the American people think it makes sense that some of the wealthiest people in this country pay zero in federal income tax? Of course they don't. Zero. Corporate, large corporations making billions pay zero in federal income tax. We have got to have the guts to go forward with an agenda that shows the American people what we're trying to do. You're going to have no Republicans supporting us. Let the American people see the difference between those who are fighting for working families and those who are not.
So let me ask you, though. I've talked to Pennsylvania Democrats, and they also blame Senators Manchin and Sinema. They don't blame the Republican. Is that healthy for the party that all of this concentration on should you?
Yes! If your party is undisciplined, you're never going to get anything done. What, we going to elect 5 more Democrat mansions and they all vote against it? You need party discipline. If your party cannot discipline its own members, you're going to lose. And it gives breathing room to Republicans. If it was just us versus them, then we could attack Republicans. But since they exist, Republicans can use them as a shield and say, it was so unreasonable, even your own senators didn't agree. It was so expansive. So yeah, you have to take them out. If you're going to make a contrast, there has to be a contrast.
Have found something to do that isolates the Republicans rather than you guys ended up dividing the party against itself.
No, I don't see it that way, Chuck. I mean, I think on all of these issues, we had zero Republican support for the proposals in Medicare, in Build Back Better, that were enormously popular. So it's certainly not just Manchin and Sinema. They are 2 out of the 50 Democrats who went in the wrong direction. But every Republican did. You didn't have one Republican who said that maybe in the richest country in the history of the world, we should expand Medicare to cover dental care, hearing aids, and vision. Not one Republican who said that maybe the United States should join every other major country on earth and have paid family and medical leave. So a woman giving birth today isn't forced to go back to work a week from now. Not one Republican. So if your point is it's not just Manchin and Sinema, you're right. It is every Republican. Now, the problem, I think, is we have not done a good job in making that clear to the American people.
Do you understand? Do you think if you don't produce something big here, maybe, look, prescription drug reform seems to be the thing you would think you could get 50 votes for. But let's say you get nothing. Then do you understand if Democrats end up losing control of the House and Senate? Do you think that's the explanation?
No, I think what we have got to do, if we cannot even pass something, I don't know what the latest polling is, Chuck, you may know it, is at 80, 90% of the American people who think we should lower the outrageously high cost of prescription drugs. We pay by far the highest prices in the world. Oh, everybody understands that we should do that. We have zero Republican support to have Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices and do what the VA does, which could cut prescription drug prices.
Do you have 50 votes for it, though?
So our job is, I would hope so. I'm not sure that we do. But if we don't, we certainly will not have one Republican support. So if we can't accomplish these goals, at the very least, we've got to make it clear to the American people that you have a Republican. We got 48 Democrats, 49 on some votes that want to do the right thing. You got 0 Republicans. And we've got to make that clear to the American man. I'll tell you how you do that. You bring these votes right to the floor of the Senate. Let the Republicans vote no, and let their constituents see what they're doing.
Let me ask you about the vote to codify Roe this week. This is one of those votes that had 49 Democrats, not 50. Should it have been should the leadership have put a bill on the floor that could have gotten 52 votes, including Collins and Murkowski, to isolate the 48 Republican noes?
I mean, I personally think that you shouldn't go once. I think this is not so. Like, the people, for some reason, a lot of people who watch politics or are involved in politics believe in messaging bills. And I think there is some value in a messaging bill to give you some, like talking points, sure. But the more important thing is actually passing legislation. And I think that with Roe v. Wade, it really is more important than you actually pass legislation and do something to try to protect abortion rights. It seems to me that the Democrats don't want to do that because they think it'll take air out of tires of like the one issue that they can take into November, which is unbelievable malpractice, that they're going to gamble with your rights in order to give themselves a boost. Fucking pathetic.
No, I mean, I think we'll see what happens. But to answer your question, I think nobody should think that this process is dead. We should bring those bills up again and again and again. I was just at a rally earlier, on Saturday in Montpelier from my state capital. I mean, people cannot believe that you have a Supreme Court and Republicans who are prepared to overturn 50 years of precedent. So I think what we should do is on this bill end the filibuster, do everything that we can to get 50 votes on the strongest possible bill to protect the woman's right to control her own body.
Before we had this leak opinion about Roe being overturned, you didn't use the abortion issue as a reason not to support people. You've supported pro-life progressives if they were progressive on economic issues.
Well,
I recall a mayor of Omaha. I recall a race like that. Has your mind changed?
There you go, a mayor of Omaha.
No, I understand that. But is your philosophy changed? Is that a litmus test for you now for progressives?
No, well, I do find it interesting that at this particular moment, when literally a woman's right to choose is right at stake, that we have too many Democrats who are prepared to support a candidate in Texas who is one of the few anti-pro-choice members of Congress.
You're speaking of Henry Cuellar. You think that's a mistake?
Yeah, I do. And I think I'm supporting Jessica Cisneros down there. I hope she wins. I'm supporting Summer Lee in Pennsylvania. I hope she wins as well.
Do you think at this point, being pro-life, you can't be in the Democratic Party or in the Democratic coalition? Are you ready to go that far?
I mean, we will see. All that I can say is I think you have the overwhelming majority of people who consider themselves to be Democrats to be pro-choice. I have been pro-choice my entire life. And the candidates that I am supporting now are all pro-choice. Look, a woman's right to control her own body is really on the line, and we've got to do everything we can to defend that right.
Last question: Are you definitely going to rule out ever being a presidential candidate again, or if there's an open race in 2024, could you? Why did
I think you might ask that question?
Well, Faz Shakur wrote it in his memo.
You don't look. Nope. No politician I know rules out, all options. Everything is on the table. But, right now, my focus is to do everything that I can to elect candidates to Congress who are going to stand up and fight for working families in this coming midterm election.
Fair enough. Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont, always a pleasure, sir. Thanks for coming out, sharing your perspective.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bernie Sanders, folks. It was the chance that we had, the real chance that we had. You have an obligation to like, comment, and subscribe.